Yes, I am your host, Michael Yaffee. Yes, this is another edition of Orlando Smart Talk Radio of Beyond Reason Radio, where I'm your voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. We're on 9 to 10 tonight. Tomorrow night, we will be on 6 to 8 p.m., a 2-hour show tomorrow, Friday night, of Beyond Reason, and there will be a lot of stuff that I don't have time to talk about tonight that I will talk about tomorrow night. But, this is Beyond Reason. I'm Michael Yaffee. We got Tom Benton producing, and the reason why I'm talking so fast is because I want to get straight into what we're talking about. Look at Tom Benson's making fun of me in there.
No, I'm not.
Okay. We just have so much to talk to. I only have an hour. So last week, I had this planned out thing. I was going to do a show on Obamacare because we have a repeal bills out there, replacement bills out there. It's huge debate. What's going to happen after Obamacare is repealed? The Democrats say he wants to make America sick again and all this stuff. And I was going to do that, but then the whole Markeith Lloyd thing broke like right before the show, so I had to talk about that.
Of course.
Which it's kind of good that happened because a lot more stuff has happened dealing with Obamacare in just the week since. For instance, yesterday, I actually thought it was today, but it was yesterday, Rand Paul put forward his replacement bill, his replacement plan to repeal and replace Obamacare, and it makes me very happy, Tom Benson. This if I ruled the universe and I could control what Republicans do, I wish they would just pass this now and get it over with. Now, it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. Unfortunately, there's other Republicans who have repeal plans that are not nearly as good as this one. A lot of them, the other repeal plans, keep a lot of Obamacare, keep a lot of the problems with Obamacare. I'm going to talk about that a little bit in the show. There's a lot I want to get to. I want to get to what Rand Paul's plan is. I want to get into what I believe the problems and the solutions are to the healthcare industry. And it's going to have facts, but it's also going to be a general economic philosophy that I'm going to try to introduce to you guys of my thinking on this. We're going to get a little deep into this stuff because there's so much out there. And then I'm going to go into some stuff about how the current system, how socialism in our medical system and medical systems around the world are just hurting healthcare all around. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. But first, let's get into Rand Paul's replacement plan. He was actually on State of the Union, CNN State of the Union, last week, and he highlighted some of the things that were going to be in this plan, and I thought I would play that audio for you first. This is what he said.
I believe that it's incredibly important that we do replacement on the same day as we do repeal. We've had 6 years to complain, and we have complained. I've been one of those complaining about Obamacare. Replacement should be the same day. The replacement bill that we put together, our goal is to ensure the most amount of people, give access to the most amount of people at the least amount of cost. And I think this is where Obamacare failed. They wanted to insure people. Their motives were good. Their heart was in the right place. But they put so many mandates in it that they made it too expensive. So what's happening in the individual market, which is about 6 or 7% of the market, you have companies like Blue Cross of North Carolina losing $400 million because young, healthy people don't want to buy it because they're told, hey, you can get it anytime after you get sick. And so that they've broken the insurance model. The other problem with Obamacare is they put these mandates and said that every insurance policy has to have 10 items, things like pregnancy and dental coverage and all these things, which are great, but they add cost, and that forced people out of the market. So one of the key reforms that we'll do is we're going to legalize the sale of inexpensive insurance. That means getting rid of the Obamacare mandates on what you can buy. We're going to help people save through health savings accounts as well as a tax credit. And then one of the things that we need to talk more about, and this is the third part of the replacement bill, is we're going to allow individuals to come together in associations to buy insurance. I understand as a small business person, I had a doctor's office with 4 employees. If one of my employees got cancer, it was devastating to the bottom line, not only to them, obviously, but to the bottom line of insurance. But there's no reason why someone with 4 employees shouldn't be able to join with hundreds and hundreds of other businesses that are small to become a large entity, to get leverage, to bring your prices down, but also to get insurance that can't cancel you and guarantees the issue of the insurance even if you get sick.
So there was a lot there, a lot to go over in that sound cut. But frankly, I didn't want to interrupt him because it was just so good. I didn't want to interrupt anything he was saying. I just really liked all of it. So he said that on CNN's State of the Union last week. And yesterday, he put forward the Obamacare Replacement Act. He actually put forward a bill that has those things. And I have the fact sheet of the act right in front of me. And I'm looking at it, and it has everything he was talking about. And one thing I really liked in what he was saying in that sound cut is, and I've been saying this ever since Obama, for like 10 years now, it seems like, Obamacare did not address the real problem in the healthcare industry. Even though the title of the bill is the Affordable Care Act, it did not address cost. It did not address the cost of health insurance. They were so focused on getting people covered. Let's get as many more people covered somehow, that in their process of doing that, they did not address the real problem in the healthcare industry, and that is cost. So what happened as a result? Well, costs continue to go up. Cost for people, their premiums, their health insurance premiums, and other things as well, even medical devices, because they added a tax, so that's going to add cost as well. The cost for those things went up, the opposite of what reform really needed to take place. So what Rand Paul said there is he said we want to legalize inexpensive health insurance. And he talks about something that I've been talking about a lot, that these insurance under the Affordable Care Act, they mandated all insurances cover 10 different things, like he said there. All these different things, like he said there. And by mandating that, and not everybody wants those things. Not everybody needs those things. So they're basically paying for something they do not need. So they're paying for something they do not need. So they're priced out of the market because they're not going to pay for it. They'll rather pay the penalty. So they're priced out of the market. The healthy people are priced out of the market. What does that do? That raises costs because somebody's got to pay for it. So only sick people are the ones getting these insurance plans. And they thought they could get around that by having the mandate, but it did not work. And plus, if you mandate that they cover pre-existing conditions, that's more of an incentive for them not to get insurance until they're sick. Because they know once they get sick, the health insurance has to take you. The companies have to take you. So they're just going to wait until they're sick. So it had all the opposite effects. Cost went up, and it did not solve the problem. Now, the other thing I want to address that Rand Paul addressed yesterday, and he was on an interview with Jake Tapper, was the coverage angle. Because what I'm hearing from Democrats, I just posted a video, by the way. You can friend me on Facebook. Just search Michael Yaffee, send me your friend request. You can like Beyond Reason Radio on Facebook as well. And I posted it on there as well, and the WFLA Facebook as well. So I posted a video talking about how the Democrats have been misleading about this coverage number because they throw out 20 million people have been covered under Obamacare. 20 million new people have been covered, and 20 million people will lose their coverage if Obamacare is repealed. And those facts are misleading. That's not, it's not really a fact. It's not true, so I shouldn't say that. I'm not like Kellyanne Conway who says alternative facts or whatever. I don't believe in alternative facts. It's misleading. And Rand Paul was on with Jake Tapper yesterday. He was asked about his replacement plan, and he was asked about this coverage thing. And this is what he said to Jake Tapper. He really addresses it here.
You released your Obamacare replacement plan today. What would it do with those who now have health insurance because of the Medicaid expansion through Obamacare?
Well, most of the people that have gotten any kind of health care under Obamacare have been through Medicaid. But what they did was some dishonest accounting. They said, the federal government will pay for it, the states don't have to. But in the past, really, the states have been a primary funder of it. And since states don't have a printing press, they have to make decisions based on how much money they have. But Obama came in as Santa Claus and said, it's free. It's manna from heaven. Here, you can have all this federal government money. But there is no money up here. So I think we have to be humanitarian. We have to have a heart. We have to try to help our fellow man. But just borrowing more money from China to do it doesn't work. We do have to live within our means at the same time. So I think that any kind of Medicaid expansion, the states should say, you know what, if we're going to do this, we're going to have to raise taxes on everybody who lives in the state and not act as if it's going to be free and we're just going to get it from Washington. There is no money in Washington.
He's really smart. I just like listening to him. I mean, I know some people probably think he's boring, but I'm into that kind of stuff. But one thing he addresses, Tom Benson's making fun of me. Yeah, I know. I'm such a nerd. I get it. But the one thing he really addresses there, which I really like, is what the Democrats never. I was reading something from the Huffington Post earlier, and they kind of went around this. They weren't really talking about this. Very convenient. Is that most people that have been so-called covered, most of that 20 million number that they're throwing around that have so-called been covered under the Affordable Care Act, they've been thrown on to Medicaid. Is that what we want? I mean, just think about that for a second. If the goal was just to get people covered under government insurance, why not just expand Medicaid and have none of the other stuff? That wasn't what we were told the goal was. It's called the Affordable Care Act. So they were just thrown on to Medicaid, and Medicaid has a ton of problems already in a ton of states already, and I'm going to get to that later in the show. I have some interesting facts on that. But they're thrown on to Medicaid. Not only that, but they're now finding out that anywhere from 2 to 7 million people, and it's hard to get an exact number on there because things change and a lot of different facts change on that. But let's say the lowest number, 2 million people. They're finding out that 2 million people of those who were put on Medicaid through Obamacare would have qualified for Medicaid before Obamacare was passed. So you have the 20 million number, and actually about, I think, 84% of that 20 million were just thrown onto Medicaid. So most people were thrown onto Medicaid. Then you have 2 million of those people who would have already qualified for Medicaid anyway. So you're talking about a much smaller number of people that actually got health insurance in this country through the exchanges. Now, that doesn't count all the people that, say, lost the insurance they liked before Obamacare was passed. Remember, there's a lot of, we were told the lie, you can keep your doctor. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Well, that wasn't true. Everybody's health insurance. The premiums either went up, there were all kinds of changes because of the mandates. People lost their insurance. So they might have different insurance now. They might still be covered, but they don't like what they're covered under because the costs are too high and it's not what they wanted. So there's been a whole bunch of things that have been thrown around here, whole bunch of crazy things here, and it hasn't addressed the real problem, which is cost. And even Democrats are recognizing now that a lot of these exchanges, a lot of the marketplaces in certain states, they don't have, the health insurers are dropping out. They're dropping out of all these exchanges. So that's one problem. And then because of that, premiums are going up. That's another problem. Now, the Democrats don't care because they love Medicaid. They want everybody to be on government health care. They think that's the solution. And I have facts of why you would not want a socialist medical system in this country. Trust me on that. I've talked to people from other countries that have had real problems with socialized medicine. I have facts here from a great book. It talks about real problems with socialized medicine. I've talked to doctors that talk about real problems with socialized medicine. I know a lot of military vets who have worked and have used the VA system, which is basically socialized medicine. And there are real problems with socialized medicine. So there's all these things going around, and that's why I wanted to point out that Rand Paul's plan, which his plan includes a bunch of things. First off, it includes, in terms of pre-existing conditions, it provides a 2-year open enrollment period under which individuals with pre-existing conditions can obtain coverage. So it's not just a blanket, we accept everybody with pre-existing conditions. It has a 2-year enrollment period. I think that's a much better idea. It also restores HIPAA pre-existing condition protections. Prior to Obamacare, HIPAA already guaranteed those within the group market could obtain continuous health coverage regardless of pre-existing conditions. So there was already protections in place for pre-existing conditions. The Democrats don't want to say that. It equalizes the tax treatment of health insurance so you can get individual insurance. It expands health savings accounts. It allows people, like he said in his in that cut, to have associations where they can come in a pool and be able to have health insurance. But most importantly, which is what I've been talking about, it gets rid of the mandates on insurers that are driving up costs. Like he says, it legalizes inexpensive health insurance. Whew, a lot of information. I told you there's a lot I want to get to in this show, and we're going to get to it because I think this stuff is important. And if we get the facts out there, and I don't think my audience is dumb. I know my audience is smart. I know my audience can handle a lot of information, can handle a lot of facts. So I'm going to give them to you. So if you want to call and add anything as well, 407-916-5400, text to 23680. We have some more audio. Trump talked on ABC about expanding, Obamacare and getting rid of Obamacare. And then Jonathan Gruber, who is one of the architects of Obamacare, he was on Tucker Carlson's show earlier this week, and he had some interesting things to say about Obamacare as well. Lots of stuff we're going to get to. We're going to fight, and we're going to repeal, and we're going to replace Obamacare, and we're going to put pressure on the Republicans to do it right. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
You know what's beyond reason? Yaffee is now on YouTube. Go to YouTube now and just search Beyond Reason Radio. Your voice of truth in a world of fake news. Beyond Reason Radio continues right now.
Yes, welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. As you could probably tell, I am extremely passionate about this issue. And if you've seen me on Facebook or anything, you could probably tell I'm extremely passionate about this issue. One reason is because I've seen firsthand how it affects people negatively, especially in my generation, because it's really the millennial generation, the younger generation, that has been affected by this a lot. And you think, well, they can be covered under their parents' plan until they're 26. Well, okay, that might be true. But so many of them cannot work the amount of hours they really want to because of the mandate in Obamacare that makes full-time 30 hours. So they can only, if they're part-time, they can only work 29 hours. Before, I worked part-time jobs where I was working over 30 hours a lot of weeks. They can't do it. The other thing is, it's hurt employment in this country so much. It's hurt, so they're not getting hired as many places. I've talked to people that bosses straight up told them, employers straight up told them, we can't hire you full-time because of Obamacare. They've basically told them that. I also know people in the medical industry that have been affected by this. And more importantly than that, I think healthcare is a big liberty issue. Because once you give the government that much control over something so personal, health, your health, you're giving the government control over your health. That sets a bad precedent for the future of this country. It sets a bad precedent for spending. We already spend half our budget on healthcare with Medicaid and Medicare. So you have spending already, but it's a liberty issue when the government can mandate that you buy something just for being alive. That's a big problem to me. But not only that, but when you want it to go, because their goal is socialized medicine. Trust me on this, that's their goal. Talk to any liberal, waterboard them, they'll tell you the truth, that's what they want. And once you go down that road and all the damages are done going down that road, it's extremely difficult to get off of it. It's extremely difficult to go back. And so that's why I'm passionate about this. That's why we have to stop it. So there's another piece of audio I wanted to get to. If you missed any of the show so far, I post the podcast of the show everywhere podcasts are available. Make sure to check it out. There's a lot of information we're getting to in this show. But I found this audio of Jonathan Gruber. He was on Tucker this week on Fox News. I don't know how Tucker does it, but he somehow gets everyone who disagrees with him on his show. Have you noticed that? All his guests, these people that really, really disagree with Tucker, he'll get them on the show and they'll debate. And it's helped his show a lot. Now, Jonathan Gruber was the guy who said, chalk it up to the stupidity of the American voter on why Obamacare was passed. And, he got a lot of criticism for that. So a lot of you heard that cut before. But he was on Tucker this week, And he said something very interesting about the goal of Obamacare. And a lot of it's just not true. But this is what he said. Can you play that Gruber Cup for me, Tom?
This law was never supposed to help everybody, Tucker. That wasn't the design. The law was actually explicitly designed first in Massachusetts and then for the nation to leave the vast majority of Americans alone. People who had health insurance that worked for them through their employer or the government were not designed to be affected by this law, by and large, in the near term. They were hoped to benefit in the long term through lowering costs. But in the near term, the law was designed to fix what was wrong with our system, which was focused on the 20% of Americans who did not have health insurance or were buying it through a broken non-group insurance system. And that was the design of the law.
So he just said right there that the design of the law was not to help everyone. And see, that's kind of the biggest flaw, because in order to get something passed, it needs to help the majority of people voting on it, voting in the country. But he was saying, what it was supposed to do is people could keep their insurance that they like. People already had it through their employer, but it was going to help the people who are uninsured. Well, the problem is that's not what happened. That's where he was wrong. The problem is it not only didn't help everyone, but it hurt everyone. Because, we said, it was supposed to lower costs in the long run, but it did the exact opposite of that. And of course it would. When you add government mandates like that, of course it's going to raise costs. So it raised costs, it raised premiums. But look at this. I found this from the American Action Forum. They just came out with some research on their own. They did a study on this, and they found that regulations from the Affordable Care Act are driving up healthcare premiums and are costing small business employees at least $19 billion in lost wages annually. So when you're in a small business, you're losing that part of your wage because you're paying more for your health care. A lot of people don't realize this. They talk about how they want to increase wages. This has the opposite effect. He says the study says these figures varied by state, but in 2015, the ACA cost year-round workers $2,095, $2,134, and $2,260 in Ohio, New York, and North Dakota, respectively. Premium increases, a prospect regulators predicted, of course, when the ACA was passed, also significantly diminished the number of business establishments and jobs nationwide. Across the country, small businesses lost 295,030 jobs, 10,130 business establishments, and $4.7 billion in total wage earnings. So you talk about, this wasn't designed to help everyone. Well, it's hurting people, and it's hurting people in more ways than just healthcare. It's hurting jobs. It's hurting economic growth. It's hurting a lot of people in small business. Of course it would. That's who it's going to affect most because they can't get around the law. Florida, our state of Florida, lost 17,950 jobs. Ohio lost 19,000. Pennsylvania lost 15,680. And Texas lost 28,010 jobs due to higher sensitivity to rising healthcare premiums in the ACA. That was according to the American Action Forum. The study's out there. The research is out there. And it's scary stuff. And I haven't even gotten into what the regulations have done. According to the latest data, for instance, final rules alone have generated $51 billion cost and more than 172 million hours of paperwork compliance. To put that in perspective, it would take more than 86,200 employees working full-time to complete a year of new ACA paperwork. It's incredible. It's incredible. And yet the Democrats love this, and they think scare tactics and all this stuff. This is why the Republicans are working so hard to repeal it, because they know it's a disaster. And Trump's actually been talking about this as well. In the next segment, we're going to go over what Trump said on ABC News about healthcare. He said a lot of interesting things, and I like most of what he said. So we'll talk about that. A lot more to get to. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Subscribe to the Beyond Reason podcast today on your Stitcher app and hear the voice of reason anytime. Your safe space for conservative thought, not for political correctness. Yaffee is back right now.
Yes, I am back. Your voice of reason is back. By the way, I want you to tune into the show tomorrow night. We have a 2-hour show tomorrow night at Beyond Reason Radio. What better way to start off your weekend than Beyond Reason Radio on a Friday night, of course. And it's 6 to 8 p.m. And the reason why you have to tune in is because there's a lot of stuff that happened this week that I just haven't had a chance to talk about. I mean, Trump's saying they're building the wall. He's saying Mexico is going to reimburse us for that wall. He's saying they're going to add an import tax to pay for the wall, which isn't really Mexico paying for the wall. That would be the American consumer paying for the wall. So I'm not a big fan of that. See, what else is? I mean, he talked about how torture works. Although, see, that whole argument bothers me too, because when you say torture, that's a very vague term. Now, torture works. I mean, I don't think Trump wants to start cutting off people's hands or something or breaking their kneecaps. I think we're talking waterboarding, which is, in the big scheme of things, is a very, if it's even considered torture really, it's a very, very minor form of torture. So that's another thing we have to address tomorrow. There's executive orders that he's done that we have to address tomorrow. Things he has said on Twitter, the illegal alien thing, saying illegal aliens are voting, and that's why Hillary won the popular vote, even though I've looked into this stuff. There is no evidence that that occurred. And when you make that claim, you need evidence to back it up. You can't just, if you're the one making the claim, you can't say, now prove me wrong. You have to have evidence to back it up first if you're making the claim. So is there voter fraud? Of course there's voter fraud. Is it 3 million people? Probably not. And somebody I heard today made a really good point. How come if that's true, how come that didn't happen in the swing states? You know, if so there's no illegals in swing states that Trump won. So there's a whole bunch of issues. They looked at some of the congressional districts locally in certain states, and they found that voter fraud wasn't really an issue there. So yeah, you have to tune in tomorrow. You have to tune in tomorrow 6 to 8 because there is a ton of stuff we have to talk about. But I told you last week I was going to do a show a lot on Obamacare. Rand Paul put forward his Obamacare plan. I've talked about it in this show. If you miss any show, make sure to catch the podcast. Well, Trump talked about it this week as well. It's a big deal this week. By the way, Paul Ryan said this week that they're probably looking towards spring. He said, we'll probably repeal it in the spring. No. How about we do it now? You know, Trump's moving fast. He's getting a lot done in just a few days. Why don't we get this done now? I think that's let's just get this done. I'm just saying. How about we do that? So Trump was on ABC News with David Muir, and who, by the way, I'm jealous of his voice. I like his voice, David Muir. He's got a good voice.
I thought you were going to say his hair.
His hair is pretty good, but I think my hair's okay. I get some compliments on my hair. Mine's got a little more gray, but apparently women like that. I've never understood that, but apparently they do. I don't get it. But yeah, no, I'm jealous of his voice. He could probably do well in radio as well. But anyway, Trump was asked by David Muir in this interview about his thoughts on Obamacare and replacing Obamacare and repealing and all this stuff. And here is the interview with Trump and him.
Let me ask you, Mr. President, about another promise involving Obamacare, to repeal it. And you told the Washington Post that your plan to replace Obamacare will include insurance for everybody. That sounds an awful lot like universal coverage.
It's going to be what my plan is that I want to take care of everybody. I'm not going to leave the lower 20% that can't afford insurance. Just so you understand, people talk about Obamacare. And I told the Republicans this. The best thing we could do is nothing for 2 years, let it explode, and then we'll go in and we'll do a new plan, and the Democrats will vote for it, believe me. Because this year you'll have 150% increases. Last year in Arizona, 116% increase. Minnesota, 60-some-odd% increase. And I told them, except for one problem, I want to get it fixed. The best thing I could do as the leader of this country, but as wanting to get something approved with support of the Democrats, if I didn't do anything for 2 years, they'd be begging me to do something.
Okay, stop right there. Here is the problem with that thinking, and Rand Paul pointed this out. If he did nothing for 2 years, the Republicans would get blamed for it. Even though it would be the Democrats' fault because they're the ones who passed all this law, that's just how it works in politics. The current president, the current Congress are the ones who would get blamed for it, which is why Rand Paul says we need to repeal and replace right away, so the Republicans don't get blamed for the mess, the unraveling of Obamacare. So I disagree with him that he's right about all the problems, though, and all the cost increases, though. And he's talking about we're going to cover the people who can't afford it. Well, we've already had Medicaid. Medicaid has existed. We're spending billions and billions of dollars on Medicaid every year. The federal government spends it, but the states spend it. And Rand Paul's plan would lower costs so more people could afford it, but it also has ideas for the states to be able to do it. You know, this whole idea that, you know, people are dying in the streets because they can't get health care, it's just Democrat scare tactics. So here's more of the interview. He continues on here.
I want to do that. So just so you understand, Obamacare is a disaster. It's too expensive. It's horrible health care. It doesn't cover what you have to cover. It's a disaster. I said to the Republican folks, and they're terrific folks, Mitch and Paul Ryan, I said, look, if you go fast, and I'm okay in doing it because it's the right thing to do. We want to get good coverage at much less cost. I said, if you go fast, we then own Obamacare. They're going to put it on us. And Obamacare is a disaster waiting to explode. If you sit back and let it explode, it's going to be much easier. That's the thing to do, but the right thing to do is to get something done now. I want to make sure that nobody's dying on the streets when I'm president.
You've seen the estimate that 18 million Americans could lose their health insurance if Obamacare is repealed and there is no replacement.
Okay,
can you
stop right there. This is according to the CBO that said they put out this report that said 18 million people would lose their insurance if Obamacare was repealed. Except that very CBO report keeps parts of Obamacare in place. It keeps the mandates on insurance companies, the reforms on insurance companies in place. So that repeal wasn't a full repeal in that CBO report. It was a very misleading report because it didn't take in, say, some of the reforms Rand Paul has to make insurance more affordable, that if they lost their coverage, they could afford to get it somewhere else. So that 18 million number, don't buy into that. That's with the current mandates, and it's an incredibly misleading number. So that's out there. That's what Trump should have said. I don't know if he said that, but Trump continues on here.
For those Americans watching this right now, that they will not lose their health insurance or end up with anything less.
So nobody ever deducts all the people that have already lost their health insurance that liked it. You had millions of people that liked their health insurance and their health care and their doctor and where they went. You had millions of people that now aren't insured anymore.
I'm just asking about the people who are nervous and watching you for reassurance.
Here's what I can assure you. We are going to have a better plan, much better health care, much better service treatment, a plan where you can have access to the doctor that you want and the plan that you want. We're going to have a much better health care plan at much less money. We're going to have an explosion. And to do it right, sit back, let it explode, and let the Democrats come begging us to help them because it's on them. But I don't want to do that. I want to give great health care at a much lower cost.
So no one who has this health insurance through Obamacare.
Okay, stop right there, for instance. Let's just do this now and pass Rand Paul's plan. I'm just saying, let's just get it done. He talks about this is what we're going to do. We have it. Let's just get it done here. I know it's politics. I mean, Trump's supposed to be the guy to get things done. Come on now. Let's just pass this law. Okay, they continue on here.
We'll lose it or end up with anything
when
less.
You say no one, I think no one. Ideally, in the real world, you're talking about millions of people. Will no one. And then, knowing ABC, you'll have this one person on television saying how they were hurt. Okay. We want no one.
I love
We want the answer to be no one. But I will say millions of people will be happy. Right now you have millions and millions and millions of people that are unhappy.
So I thought that was fantastic because he's exactly right. That's exactly what they would do. They would find the one person out there, a few people who would say they're negatively affected, and they would get them on the air and they would promote it like, this is what Obamacare is doing to your families. This is I just thought that was a great comment. by Trump. I thought that was great. So 407-916-5400, text to 23680. I want to get into some other things. I want to get into how socialized medicine in terms of overseas is failing people. And I want to get into how government Medicaid is failing people in some states now. And what are the solutions? And a lot of it's just common sense stuff and economic principles that have existed forever that don't apply in healthcare because the government's been involved in it for years already. 407-916-5400. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Listen to the latest episodes of Beyond Reason. Download the podcast at Spreaker.com. The conscience in your ear telling you the difference between right and wrong. Yaffee is back on the air.
Yes, welcome back, everyone. This has been a very interesting edition of Beyond Reason Radio. If you've missed any of the show, make sure to check out the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. By the way, that includes YouTube. You can listen to the whole show on YouTube later as well. I always post it on my Facebook page, so you can send me a friend request on Facebook. I will accept it. Lots of stuff I post all the time on Facebook, which creates interesting debates, and it's always a lot of fun. By the way, I think this is a bold statement, but I think it's true. Remember when Obama said his was going to be the most transparent administration ever? And that was totally not true in any sense of the form. Mm-hmm. I honestly think Trump's administration might be the most transparent administration ever.
Absolutely. The man loves the publicity.
Exactly, because he loves it. People, they were so afraid that he was going to ignore the media, not have not have reporters in and not talk to them and all that stuff. He's been everywhere. He had a thing with ABC News. He's going to be on Hannity. I mean, all kinds of stuff. He's adding more people into the press pool because he loves the attention. Not only that, but we have the great Twitter account, which we always know what Trump's thinking because he tells us on Twitter. So in some ways, I just think it's funny how the left was really afraid of that, and it's not going to happen. He's going to let you all know what he's doing. Of course he is. And then they're posting videos on YouTube and everything, so it's really great stuff. So in terms of healthcare, usually the argument I get from a lot of people is that, well, we should have socialized medicine. We should be like Canada. We should be like Britain. We should be like Europe and have these socialized medical programs. Now, ignoring how much that would cost, there's so many other problems with it. Now, it's hard to compare them, back to back because Canada's different than Britain. The United Kingdom, their socialized medicine is, they have private as well. So you can get private supplemental insurance. So if you don't, because their socialized medicine doesn't cover everything, so a lot of people who can afford it, they have to buy health insurance outside of it as well. You cannot do that in Canada. You're stuck in Canada. The only way you can supplement your insurance as Canada is come to the United States, which a lot of them do. But think about it. If we have socialized medicine but still private, you're going to be paying twice. And by the way, a lot of people do that already with Medicare. A lot of people get Medicare supplement. So they're paying through their taxes, the government's paying, and then you have to pay again. So you're still buying insurance, and then the cost of the supplement goes up, and then you're at the same problem you had. But let me give you some facts. I got this from the book The Problem with Socialism by economist Thomas DiLorenzo, and great stuff. And he talks about some of the problems with socialized medicine. He said, governments always respond to the shortages that their policies created by imposing some kind of rationing. In Britain, more than 1 million people are waiting to be admitted to hospitals at any one point in time. In Canada, one study found that 876,000 people were waiting for treatments. In Norway, more than 270,000 people are daily waiting for hospital admissions and other medical treatment. And in New Zealand, some 90,000 people wait for medical care on any given day. Canadian patients waited more than 8 weeks to see a specialist and then another 9.5 weeks before treatment. This is including surgery, by the way. This is not just, for the cold. In New Zealand, the average waiting time for elderly patients in need of hip or knee replacement surgery is between 300 and 400 days. Some people in New Zealand waited for 2 years for their surgeries. Oh, well, that's just knee and hip, and that's not a big deal. Oh, yeah, what about this? An investigation by a British newspaper found that delays in treatment for colon cancer patients were so long that 20% of the cases were incurable by the time they finally received treatment. The same was true of lung cancer patients, and 25% of British cardiac patients die waiting for treatment. Die.
Yeah, those circumstances also may cause another ugly head to be revealed, and that is bribes. Bribing doctors and medical people for get the attention and care.
A good person to talk about this, by the way, is Simon Conway, who fills in for Bud.
Mm-hmm.
He's on our sister station in Iowa. He lived over there. He blames that healthcare system for killing his dad.
Wow.
Openly on the show. Not only that, but I talked to him once, and he had some kind of tumor on his jaw, and it was very small. And he said, okay, well, how long till I can get it removed? Oh, like 6 months or something, some really long period. And he's like, well, how big is it going to be by then? And he said, it could be the size of a baseball by then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So then he goes, and then the doctor goes, unless you have private, insurance. And he goes, oh, I have private. Oh, well, I'll see you tomorrow.
Wow.
Isn't that ridiculous?
Yeah.
And people want that here. The biggest problem with insurance now, when you look at any other part of our economy, you buy food or whatever, you know what you're paying for it when you pay for it. So you know the cost of it. There's no middleman. So you shop around for the best prices. Then you have competition, which lowers the prices. Right now, we expect, because it's mandated by insurance, we expect our insurance companies to pay for all that. So we really don't, there's not a connection between the cost of the treatment and the person paying for it. So what happens? Well, the costs go up. The prices go up because there's no competition. There's no incentive for efficiency. And so the prices just go up. What should happen, and this is part of what Rand Paul's doing, is you have worst case coverage for insurance, just like we have with car insurance. Worst case scenario coverage. So if you really need it for really bad things, it's there. But for your regular doctor's visits, for your regular prescriptions, for all these other things, you pay for it out of pocket. And because people know what they're paying, they'll shop around. I had to do that with my prescriptions. I have a prescription I get at Walmart because it was cheaper at Walmart than CVS. So I went to Walmart. Imagine if we did that for all of our health care. That is the solution. And that's why health savings accounts work, because health savings accounts will cover a lot of that out-of-pocket expenses. And I'm telling you, if enough people take that approach, some people said, well, I tried that once and it didn't work. Well, you're one person. If enough people take that approach and we get back to these economic free market principles, costs will go down. People say prescriptions more expensive here than in Canada. Well, that's because the Canadian healthcare system and the British healthcare system, they negotiate prices with the drug companies. Imagine if the individual was able to negotiate prices with the drug companies. Costs would go down. So much to get to. Hopefully, we could just pass Rand Paul's plan. And we talked a lot about the show. If you missed any of the show, make sure to catch the podcast as well. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I will be on tomorrow night, 6 to 8 p.m. We're going to talk, I think we'll talk about Trump a little bit. I think that will be a part of the show, but there's a lot of other stuff we'll get to as well. Make sure to send me a friend request on Facebook. Search Michael Yaffee. Send me a friend request, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Well, I found some kind of conviction.